Hello and welcome to our webinar today on ChartGuard. We're going to help you understand how ChartGuard can be used with athenaClinicals to assist you during outages, whether that's a network outage or a system outage. This presentation will be recorded and we'll make it available to you as follow-up along with the slides. During the presentation, everyone's microphone will remain muted. However, you're welcome to enter questions in the question panel on the GoToWebinar control box. We have some exciting news. Iten Healthcare has recently become part of DAS Health. This brings the ability for Iten to cover more systems and with more staff. We've basically quadrupled our size, but still retained that great Iten service. A little bit about us. Our passion has been to help clients achieve the most with their clinical systems. We've been in business since 2003. Many of us have experience dating back before that, working for various healthcare organizations. Our goal is to make sure you can maximize the value of your system. So let's go ahead and proceed with our presenters today. We have Tom Seco, who will be doing a majority of the slides today, and myself, Joseph Schultz, who will be doing the technical aspects of today's demonstration. Go ahead, Tom.
Okay, thank you, Joe, and thank you everyone for joining our webinar today and learning about accessing your patient records during an unexpected system outage. This is an agenda put together that we're going to cover today. You're going to come away and understand why practices invest in this type of solution. We'll talk about EHR dependencies. We'll talk about how the ChartGuard solution works. We'll show you the output that's generated by ChartGuard, and then we'll answer any questions that you have. So what we're talking about today is simply a business continuity solution that ensures the availability of your patient charts when connectivity to your EHR system is lost. There was a survey done a few years ago that was conducted for U.S. healthcare organizations, and it stated that the previous 3 years, 96% of the institutions reported at least one unplanned downtime, and 70% had at least one unplanned downtime lasting 8 or more hours. So it is significant downtime situations that can occur. Our systems, our EHR systems are dependent on complex technology. You know, we have workstations, we have tablets, we have scanners, we got servers, we got internet connections, we got local area networks, we got T1 lines, we got fiber lines, we have wireless routers, we got VPNs, power systems, cooling systems. And behind each one of these pieces of hardware, there's also software that runs as well. So each component, hardware and software, creates a complex system. And if we lose access to, or one of those components has an issue, can cause us to lose access to our systems. And when we lose access to our EHR systems, it can impact the business. It can impact our quality of care. It can impact productivity. It can impact revenue. So there is a significant impact when we lose access to our systems. This is a slide that just shows various outages that have occurred over the past few years. I, on occasion, go out and do some research on these to see what kind of outages have occurred and why they occurred, to give us a kind of a history. You know, we become so dependent on our technology that we lose fact that it's working for us all the time, and sometimes there is an outage. I'm not going to go through each one of these, but I am going to focus your attention on a couple things to take away from it. One, all of these companies that are on here are all ISP providers. And two, look at the duration of time. So it varies from 1 hour up to several days, a few hours. And then if you look at the type of outage as to what caused it, it varies, from natural occurrences to occurrences that occur because people cause problems. So you'll have people that make mistakes, and they have good intentions and they make a mistake and something happens, or you have people who have bad intentions and want to cause chaos and disruption. So it can happen at any time. All these organizations are built for providing service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And you can see that they, with all of the redundancy that they have in their systems, it can still have an outage. So it can happen anytime to us. And we as organizations should be prepared for that as a business, and so that we can continue on with our business if we're prepared well enough. There have been some surveys that have been done with regards to downtime and what it can cost. Some surveys have shown that downtime can cost as much as $488 per hour per provider. So it can be quite expensive. If you extrapolate that out for a 10 provider practice that's down for 4 hours, it can cost as much as $19,520. And because of that, situations that can affect our EHR system, HIPAA has a clause in it that states that we should have a contingency plan or plans for responding to various emergencies or other types of situations that can impact our EHR system. So what are our options when we're dealing with an outage? Well, we could implement, redundant technologies. So we could add additional network connections. We could add additional power systems. We could temporarily close a practice or a location. We could go to paper charts, but that's becoming obviously more and more difficult for us to do as we become more and more dependent on our EHR systems. But we could also implement a solution that ensures that you're prepared to handle a downtime situation. So, as we reflect on just what I talked about, that our systems are complex, that our systems are dependent on many components, that downtime is caused by unexpected events that can happen beyond our control. And as we reflect also on what our options are when a downtime situation occurs, there's some questions that we should be asking ourselves and thinking about. So starting from the top right corner of the screen and moving then clockwise, something we should be thinking about is, do I pursue uptime or do I pursue a solution that enables me to continue on with my business until Athena comes back online? So do I add more power systems, or do I add another network connection in order for me to reach that 100% uptime? Or do I not invest in that type of hardware and redundancy? Do I invest in a solution that enables me to continue with my business as the IT team is working to bring Athena back online? What are the types of impacts that an Athena downtime incident can have on our clinic? Thinking about the impacts of lost productivity, or thinking about the impact on revenue, thinking about the impact on patient satisfaction, thinking about the impact on quality of care. So if I were to be think about those impacts and how it would affect our business if we were down for a period of time. And then think about how significant that impact can be to our clinic based on the duration of the downtime incident. So if I'm down for 1 hour, how does that affect my quality of care to my patients? How does that affect my revenue? How does that affect my productivity of the staff? If I'm down for 2 hours, how does that affect my quality of care? Or how does that affect my patient satisfaction? How does that affect my revenue? How does that affect my my productivity of my staff? If I'm down for 3 hours, so just kind of go through that scenario and see how the duration of the impact can affect the various types of impacts that it can have on the clinic and on the business itself. Am I going to be reactive or proactive to my clinic's preparedness for downtime? Meaning, I've had a downtime situation, so I want to be reacting to that downtime because we didn't have a solution in place, so I want to implement a solution. Or I'm going to encounter a downtime situation. We haven't had one yet, but I want to be prepared for one in case we do. So I'm being proactive. Another question to ask is, when was last time that you reviewed your downtime preparedness and business continuity strategy and plan? Did you put one together, a few years ago and you look at it every year? Or did you put one in a few years ago and you haven't looked at it in, the past several years? So, look at that as well. Think about that question. And then how do I minimize the loss? How do I minimize the disruption when a downtime situation does happen? So how do I minimize the lost revenue? How do I minimize the lost productivity? How do I minimize the disruption to my patients and my physicians and providers when they're seeing their patients if we have a downtime situation? So think about that as well. And the last item to think about is, when we experience an unexpected downtime situation, who's going to be the first to notice that there's no access to Athena? Is it going to be the front office? Is it going to be the back office? Is it going to be your physicians and your providers? Who's going to be the first ones that may notice it? And then, how do I deal with that situation? If the physicians and providers are the first ones to notice it, how do they communicate that and to us so that we can get Athena back online, and so that everybody can continue on with their business. So just some questions to think about. Because of all of that complexity and challenges that we have when we lose access to our EHR systems, we had some clients that asked us to develop a solution for them. So we worked with them and brainstormed with them on the type of solution that would be beneficial to them and be cost effective for them and be an effective solution that would enable them to continue to see their patients and continue on with the business. And that's how our ChartGuard product came about. So it is an affordable business continuity solution. It's cost effective, it's easy to use. It ensures that you are prepared for a downtime situation in each of your clinic locations, each of your office locations, each of your departments, and that you have access to your patient charts during an EHR downtime so that you can continue to see your patients with their current chart information while the IT team is working to bring Athena back online. So then I'm going to turn it back to Joe, and he's going to take you through how the ChartGuard for Athena solution works.
Great, thank you, Tom, and thank you for those joining us today for this presentation. So ChartGuard for athenaHealth, as Tom mentioned, was developed in conjunction with clients who needed access to clinical data during a downtime scenario. And the downtime could be some system outage, but more likely it'll be a network outage. Now, this solution works for both, but where we see the outages most often, as Tom showed in that slide earlier, is in the network itself. So it's either your private network has gone down or the internet has gone down. And in talking with these early adopters of ChartGuard, what they were looking for was something that was not based up in the cloud, because the risk of having the data up in the cloud is, if we can't get to the internet to get to Athena, we're not going to be able to get to the internet to get to our data in the cloud. So we sat down and talked with them further and came up with a great architecture for making this data available. And the way this works is, we'll pull the data that we need to generate the PDF files of the patient charts, and those PDF files will mimic the paper charts that we had a few years ago. So it'll be that information in a simple, easy to use file. And what we'll do is we'll pull those files down into each of your locations or departments nightly, so that you'll have several days worth of patients who are coming in based on the schedule. You'll have those charts available to you within the four walls of that location, which of course means if the internet goes down, you already have those in your possession. And the reason we do several days worth of charts when we generate them is in case the outage happens late in the day and goes into the next day. That way you'd still have the majority of the charts for the patients coming in that following day. Now, in designing all this, we had some goals of making it really easy to use, minimizing the amount of PHI that we're pulling into the cloud, And being able to produce large numbers of charts for bigger practices or just produce them quickly for smaller practices, have the ability to use these charts either electronically as the PDF file or drop them to paper, and that ability to have the charts pulled to each site so that they're out there already when the network goes down. So in looking at the diagram here, we'll see the Athena cloud. This is basically where your data is hosted for Athena. It is part of the setup for ChartGuard. We'll work with you. You'll grant us access to your data, and the data will be pulled into the Iten cloud, which is in the upper right of the picture. And the Iten cloud will take that several days worth of patient data, we'll cull it down to the data that you need for an outage, and we'll work with you to define what that means. But typically, if a patient's been coming to you for 10 years, you may not need all 10 years worth of data during that outage. You may just need the last several encounter summaries and then summaries of things like medications, problems, that type of stuff. So we'll pull that into the Iten cloud. We'll produce the PDF files for those several days, and then an agent will wake up at each of your locations, each of your departments, and pull down the appropriate charts for the patients that are going to be seen at that department. So this system happens from beginning to end every night, and it also cleans up after itself, so you don't end up accumulating more PHI out of the database than you intended. The goal is just to have that several day window of patient information flowing through ChartGuard and then down onto a computer at each location. So the system will automatically purge the old data. So you don't have to worry about it filling up the hard drive, or again, as I mentioned earlier, just having that PHI exposure continue to increase. At each location, there's an agent that'll go ahead and unencrypt those charts when needed and make them available on that PC. And then if the network is still up within the four walls of that location, you can simply publish a share from that PC and allow the clinicians to use those charts out of the folder as PDF files. If the network's down in that location, then you'd have a locally attached printer to the PC that's hosting those charts for that department, and you'd go ahead and print them to paper and drop them in the manila folder just like we were doing a few years ago. So you have a lot of different options with ChartGuard, but again, it all comes back to that goal of making the clinical information available to you when you can't get to your system or you can't even get out to the internet. And that's what we've been striving for here. So what's in these charts? We'll go ahead and go to the next slide here. In these charts, we're going to go ahead and start with kind of a baseline chart and then let you tell us how you want to change it. What we've learned is if we show you something, it's easier to look at the something and go, yeah, we need this, we need more of that, we don't need this, versus just asking you out of the blue. So we'll give you kind of a base run for you to review internally with your clinicians and decide how you want to tweak it. Additionally, each department will get an appointment listing so they know which patients are coming in and what time they're expected. This is useful, A, for just general check-in, and B, for if you're dropping the charts to paper so you know what order to do it in. You probably don't want to drop all of them to paper and print them all out if the network's going to be up in an hour. So you can kind of just do it on demand and keep maybe 30 minutes ahead of the appointment schedule with the ones that are going to paper. So it's kind of a nice solution, and it gives you some options there. But you can see on the slide here all the different things that can be included in these PDF files. The most popular ones are the documents for the encounter summaries, but again, there's quite a variety of things, and based on your practice and any specialties that you may or may not want to pull into these PDF files. The whole key is to give you what you need, but not overwhelm you with too much information. Tom, if you want to go to the next slide. Okay, I'll turn it over to Tom now, who's going to walk us through a sample of one of these charts.
Okay, thank you, Joe. And so this is what the patient chart that Joe was just talking about that gets generated by ChartGuard in the PDF format. This is what it looks like. And you can see here, the top part is the demographic information with regards to the patient. You get to see their insurances, responsible party, And then if you scroll down, you'll see the various sections and how they're laid out in a nice table format, so it's easy to read. So here you have the allergies. You'll scroll down to the next page and you'll see medications. And you can scroll down and you can see order results. So you can see the various sections and how it's laid out in a table format. We also bookmark the PDF file, so it makes it easy for someone to get to a particular section that they want to see. So if they wanted to go directly to vital signs, they could go down to the bookmark, click on that, and then you can take a look at the vital signs. If they want to go back up to medications, they could click on the bookmark and go up to the medications. So it gives each person an option to either scroll from top to bottom or use the bookmarks to go to the appropriate section that they directly want to see. But you also, as Joe mentioned, we can include images as well, and the summaries, the encounter summaries in the document. So very easy to read. PDF format, as Joe says, makes it much easier for you to read them on any type of device, whether it's a laptop, a desktop, a tablet, a smartphone, anything that has a PDF reader. Makes it very easy to access the information and be able to view it. So that's what the chart looks like. So as we had a client who had used our ChartGuard solution, and they had an outage, and the administrator had taken some time to write us an email after they had implemented ChartGuard and used it. So this is a client of ours who's an orthopedic practice in Tennessee, and they're fairly large now. They have about 20 physical locations, and they've been using our ChartGuard product for several years. But after they purchased ChartGuard and implemented it, about 6 months later, they experienced an outage at 2 of their largest clinic locations. And prior to implementing ChartGuard, they typically closed the clinics that were affected by an outage and turned away their patients. With ChartGuard implemented, they were able to see their patients with minimal disruption using the appointment listing and using the PDF chart files that are generated by ChartGuard to see their patients and continue on with basically keeping the clinical side of the practice up and running while their IT team was working to bring their EHR system back online. So you can see from the quote here that their physicians were quite pleased with the ChartGuard solution and how it worked for them, and not having to close down the particular patients that were affected by the outage like they had to in the past. Oops. So that we'll take some questions, but before that, as far as next steps, if you have an interest in learning and having a more in-depth discussion about ChartGuard and how it would work within your organization, within your practice, or within your health center, my contact information is up here on the screen, as well as Joe's. Feel free to give us a call or send us an email, and this way, if we have the in-depth discussion, we can talk about it. You can ask questions as it specifically pertains to your organization and to your current processes. We could also go through another walkthrough discussion of how it all works and how it would fit within your organization. So with that, we'll take any questions that you have.
Hey, Tom, I'll take this one on the installation that came in.
Okay.
So what basically the question boils down to what's involved in the installation process for ChartGuard. And there are several steps. We'll normally start with a kickoff call that involves the stakeholders. So those will be someone representing the clinicians and the business and IT. And from that call, we'll go ahead and identify the players. We'll also ask you to submit for us to have access to your Athena database. And once we have access to your Athena database, we'll configure our parts in the Iten clouds to start creating those PDF files. And at the same time, we'll work with IT to deploy the client portion of ChartGuard that pulls down the encrypted batch of PDF files each day, get that going on at least one of your computers so that you can start reviewing those PDF files. And then we'll kind of circle back around with you to see how you want the contents of those PDF files tweaked so that it meets your needs. And that's really the key here. As I mentioned before, we want to give you what you need, but we don't want to overwhelm you with it. We'll be hands-on with you the whole time. This isn't throw it over the wall and hope for the best. We'll work with you to make sure that ChartGuard gets fully deployed and is available for you to use during downtime.
Okay, Joe, there's two other questions that came in. One of them is, can you review how secure the patient charts are?
The patient charts are held in our cloud, which is HIPAA compliant. So we encrypt the PDF files before they go down to each department. And when they come across the network, it's over a secure SSL connection or SFTP connection, depending on your configuration. Additionally, they are double encrypted into an archive file. So we do a number of things to make sure that the data while in transit stays secure and continues to be secure up to the point where you need it.
And then the second question is, can I use this solution on a PC that is used on a daily basis by the staff?
You get to pick which PC you want to have for each department that's going to pull down these charts. Normally we recommend it be a PC that's more in the back office than the front office, but it certainly can be a PC that's used by someone during the day, and then they just leave it on, and early in the morning it would wake up and pull down the latest batch of charts.
Okay, that's all the questions that I have seen here. So if anybody has any other questions, again, if you see our information up there on the screen, like I said, send us an email or give us a call and we'll answer any questions that you have as you may think about this over the next couple of days. Other than that, we'll go ahead and close down the webinar, and thank everybody for joining us today on our webinar and learning about our ChartGuard solution.
Thank you, everyone, and have a great Thanksgiving next week.
Thank you.